What up, YouTube? What up, boys and girls? This is Chef, New Zealand Murder History Podcast. And I don't have a whole scripted show for you today. I'm just going to read an article from the paper. So let's reference it. This is Wednesday, the 12th of January, 2022. I bought this paper at the start of the year. Yeah, Christchurch Press, now just called the Press. Killer back in prison after 13 visits to red light zone. So when they say killer, they're referring to this bloke here. That's Timothy Taylor. He's the killer, or is he? Wow. A lot of people have some very, very different opinions on that. And Timothy Taylor himself says he didn't do it. I mean, that's standard, but there actually might even be some cops that agree with him. So, and the police are saying he didn't do it, and that makes me question it for sure. So that's Lisa Blakie. Yeah, she got murdered, found on February the 6th, which is Waitangi Day here in New Zealand, in the Arthur's Pass. Now, the road that she was on is actually Porter's Pass. I mean, she was found in the river, Porter's River, rather. But I just want to clarify some things. The Arthur's Pass is the road that goes from Christchurch through to Greymouth. Now, that actually only really refers to the top part of the pass, which is called Arthur's Pass, but the entire road is, I believe it's State Highway 73, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is. I'm reading it on the paper now. State Highway 73. And yeah, it goes Porter's Pass, Arthur's Pass, blah, 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 but it's all the same road. And, you know, if you're in Greymouth and you're going to Christchurch, you just say, I'm going to go take the Arthur's Pass, and that refers to that entire road. So I just wanted to clear that up right away. Yeah, my show is not suitable for children. We're going to be discussing sex work, murder, drug use, you know, stuff like that. So kids, click off. And anyone who's having some kind of mental problem or suffering from PTSD, also click off and seek support from your doctor or call one of the many 0800 numbers available. My show is just for educational purposes and not to cause offense to the victim, Lisa Blakie in this case, or anybody for that matter. Okay, let's read this article. Oh, right up, wait on. Sam Sherwood is the guy who wrote this article. So, let's read it. Now, those of you who watch my show regularly, I want you to pay attention to this article we're reading, and I want you to do your own research into this case, because I'm writing a scripted podcast about the Lisa Blakie case. Probably won't be up for a while. It's quite difficult to write. There's a lot of information, some different theories, stuff like that. But I want you to watch Brian Bruce's episode that he made about the Lisa Blakie murder. In fact, I'll link it in the description. It's actually very good. I'd highly recommend that you watch that, because the podcast that I'm writing, not today's show, the one that I'm writing for the future, is me analyzing Brian Bruce's show and all the points he made, and whether I agree with him or not is basically the premise of the show that I'm already writing. So that's why I ask that you watch his show, so that it'll make more sense, you know? But anyway, let's read this article. Killer back in prison after 13 visits to red light zone. The killer of Timaru hitchhiker Lisa Blakie is back behind bars after visiting sex workers in Christchurch's Manchester Street 13 times when he was supposed to be at work. Timothy David Taylor was jailed for murdering Blakie after she caught a ride with him on February the 2nd, 2000, while hitchhiking from Christchurch to the west coast. The 20-year-old's bruised body was found 4 days later under a boulder in a stream near Porter's Pass on State Highway 73. Taylor, who has an extensive criminal record, including rape, supplying drugs, kidnapping, was convicted after the Crown argued Blakie, who had worked in the sex industry, was killed in an attack motivated by robbery and sex. Taylor had a pokey addiction, so that in New Zealand, pokies means gambling, pokey machine where you put the $2 in. I don't know if that's what they call it over in Australia and the States, but here we call them pokey machines. Like the game poker, you get it? Anyway, Taylor had a pokey addiction at the time and was short of cash. He was also a regular user of prostitutes. Last April, Taylor was freed on parole to live in Christchurch under strict conditions. However, in December, just 7 months later, the Department of Corrections applied for Taylor to be recalled to prison because of his undue risk to community safety and breach of release conditions. An interim recall order was granted. Taylor appeared before the parole board yesterday for a final recall hearing. Taylor's probation officer said that on the first weekend Taylor had been approved to travel by himself, he deviated from his approved destination. Deviations occurred on 13 occasions with the assumed purpose of seeking the services of a prostitute. The report said 10 of those visits were caught on security cameras. The report noted Taylor had been particularly keen on one prostitute. He admitted attending the location regularly seeking this person. He would take the prostitute to another location nearby to fulfill his physical sexual needs. The probation officer was concerned that Taylor's history of violence and sexual offending meant he was undue risk from his visits. The probation officer was concerned that Taylor's history of violence and sexual offending meant there was an undue risk from his visits to the city's red light district. Previously identified risk factors for further sexual offending included sexual preoccupation and poor problem-solving skills. The probation officer added that despite GPS monitoring and an intensive reintegration program, Taylor quickly engaged in risky behavior when the opportunity arose. In a memorandum on December 24th, the probation officer outlined the 13 deviations and noted that on December 2nd, 6th, and 7th, Taylor was at other locations where he was supposed to be at work. The officer said Taylor's deviations raised doubts about his intrinsic motivation to abide by the rules. Crown Prosecutor Pip Curry, appearing on behalf of Corrections, said the place where Taylor had been staying was no longer prepared to have him as he had not been upfront with them. Curry said Taylor had not been in the community for long and deviated from what he was supposed to do at almost the first opportunity. Taylor's trips to Manchester Street raised some alarm bells, and his recall to prison should be made final, she said. Taylor's lawyer, Pip Hall, so it's a different Pip. Pip Hall's a bloke. The prosecutor, Pip Curry, is a female. But anyway, Taylor's lawyer, Pip Hall, QC, said he did not oppose the recall. Taylor accepted he breached the rules in what was quite a serious dropping of the ball and recognized he probably needed more help from a psychologist. His employer was prepared to have him back when he was able to. The parole board concluded there was no doubt Taylor was an undue risk to community safety and made a final recall order. The board called for a psychological assessment of Taylor, which would be discussed when it had another hearing with him in May. Blakie's father, Doug Blakie, told the press that Taylor's behavior was far from natural for any normal member of society. However, he remained convinced Taylor was innocent of his daughter's murder. I'm disappointed he's gone down this way because he's been convicted of a murder he didn't commit. He believed several ex-members, of the evil henchman motorcycle gang played a role in his daughter's death. Blakie said he hoped the Criminal Case Review Commission would be able to prove Taylor was not guilty, but noted Taylor's behavior after being released from jail had been unacceptable. He said his daughter's work in the sex industry did not define her. Lisa lived a double life in some ways. We had no idea she was working with gangs in that area of work. This in no way matters to us in terms of how much our loss affects her family and friends. End of article. Okay, so let's just unpack that for a minute because there's a lot of information there. So, basically, Doug Blakie says that Taylor didn't do it. I'm not 100% convinced that he didn't do it, but I also recognize that Doug Blakie met with Taylor in prison and knows a lot more about the case than me. But there's a lot more that was said in that article than that. So let's talk about the gang-related thing. There's a big theory that the evil henchman gang from Timaru were involved in Lisa Blakie's murder. Now, whether that's true or not, I need more information. Other things to note is in that article, Taylor gave her a ride on the 2nd of February 2000. Lisa's body was found on the 6th of February. Now, in Brian Bruce's documentary that I'm going to discuss at length in the up-and-coming episode I'm writing, the exact time of death is disputed. That's all I'll say about that for now. It's a bit of a rabbit hole. I could sort of be there all day talking about when Lisa Blakie may or may not got murdered, but there's a bunch of weird stuff with this case. I mean, the thing about Taylor is he looks sketchy. He doesn't just look sketchy, he is sketchy. He's an armed robber. He's addicted to gambling. I'm not saying that makes you violent, but he does do a lot of things that, raise alarm bells, and the cops just don't like him. I mean, yeah. So I don't know. Basically, I just wanted to read you guys that article and just to see what you guys think, because I know a lot of my subscribers out there might know things about this case that I don't. It's a very high-profile murder case. I guess that's all I really had to say about that for now. But yeah, let's just take another look at the photos we got here. Right, once again, that's Lisa Blakie, 20-year-old sex worker. She worked at Candy's massage parlor in Queenstown, and before that, she worked working as an escort out of her own flat in Greymouth, Cobden, Greymouth. That's Timothy David Taylor, back in prison. I don't think he's been released again since his recall. I definitely haven't heard anything about that. Fairly certain he's still in Christchurch Men's. Yeah, now, here's the thing. The white power, they're no longer really a thing. I mean, they still are a thing. Like, obviously, I mean, look at the Christchurch mosque shooter. I mean, I don't think he was necessarily in a New Zealand gang, but he was and still is white power, So they're alive and well, but they're nowhere near as powerful as they used to be. Back in the early 2000s, they used to run a lot of they'd rob drug dealers and stuff. There's different crews that were involved. The evil henchmen had a chapter in Timaru, and in Christchurch too. I don't believe they had other chapters, but I'm not certain. They may have. There was other crews involved as well. Yeah. It's actually not quite their real name. I don't like using real gang names on my show. You throw a D in front of it, and then you got their real name. So yeah, figure that one out. Was it them? Who knows? Was it Taylor? Could have been, but there's some problems with Taylor being the killer. One is that Lisa Blakie was pinned down with a 104 kg boulder. Taylor couldn't lift a 104 kg boulder, not from the ground up. Yeah, almost nobody could. A really super big, strong man with giant hands, maybe. But, nah, not Taylor. Another weird thing about this case that makes no sense at all. Lisa Blakie was stabbed 7 times in the left leg. Now that is really weird. Because if they're driving, here in New Zealand we drive on the right, Taylor's sitting in the driver's seat. If anything, he would stab her in the right leg, not the left leg. That's another thing that points to there being more than one killer. If one or two blokes was pinning her down, and she was pinned down onto her right side, so her left leg was the one that was kicking in the air, then that would be where a second or third man would be able to stab her in the left leg. It's just weird. Like, has anyone... If you're watching my show, you probably subscribe to quite a few true crime channels, so think about it. Have you ever heard of a case where the victim is strangled and stabbed 7 times in the left leg? Because I haven't. It's very odd. And nowhere else in the body was she stabbed. Nowhere on the arms, neck, nothing. So yeah, I don't know. Think about it. Tell me what you guys think. Because I'm still... I don't know. There's just plenty of unknown in this case. Alright, have a good one, everybody. All the best.